My beloved child, stop scrolling and listen closely, because what happened last night was not an ordinary confession, and it was not a moment anyone in that room will ever forget. Stay with me. Your soulmate entered that gathering carrying a truth they had hidden for far too long. They had promised themselves they would remain calm. They had practiced a quiet smile, prepared simple answers, and decided that no matter what anyone said, your name would never leave their lips. But heaven already knew their carefully built silence would not survive the night. The room was filled with familiar voices, polite laughter, and people pretending not to notice the sadness behind your soulmate's eyes. Someone asked them why they had become so distant. Another person wondered why they kept turning down every opportunity to begin again. Your soulmate looked toward the window and said nothing, yet their heart answered with your name. Don't look away now, because the smallest detail changed the atmosphere. A candle near the center of the room suddenly burned brighter, even though no one had touched it. At that exact moment, a song began playing softly in the background, the same song connected to a memory of you. Your soulmate froze. Their fingers tightened around the edge of the table, and every wall they had built inside themselves began to tremble. They remembered the way you once looked at them without asking them to become someone else. They remembered how your presence made even silence feel meaningful. They remembered the day they nearly told you everything but became afraid of how deeply you could affect them. This is where the story begins. Someone sitting across from them noticed the sudden change in their expression and asked, "Are you still thinking about that person?" The room became strangely quiet. It was not because the question was loud, it was because everyone already knew who that person was. They knew it was you. They had seen your soulmate become silent whenever your name appeared. They had watched them protect old memories that everyone else thought should have been forgotten. They had noticed how your soulmate could speak confidently about almost anything, yet became overwhelmed whenever the conversation turned toward love. Still, your soulmate tried to escape the moment. They lowered their eyes and whispered that some feelings were too complicated to explain. Then someone laughed gently and said, "If it were real, you would have done something by now." Those words struck the deepest place in your soulmate's heart. Not because they doubted their love, but because they realized their silence had made the greatest truth of their life appear uncertain. What comes next changes everything. A person near the doorway spoke your name and suggested that you had probably moved on, that perhaps you no longer cared, and that waiting for you was foolish. Your soulmate slowly lifted their head. The sadness in their eyes disappeared and something stronger took its place. For the first time, they were no longer afraid of being understood. They were afraid of losing the chance to be understood at all. Their chair moved backward. Conversation stopped. Every face turned toward them. Your soulmate stood in the center of that room with tears shining in their eyes, but those tears were not a sign of weakness. They were the release of every sentence they had swallowed, every message they had written and erased, and every night they had stared into the darkness wondering whether you could somehow feel them thinking about you. Stay till the end, because this was only the beginning of what they revealed. Someone tried to calm them, but they raised their hand and said, "No. I have been quiet long enough." Their voice shook at first. Then they looked around at everyone who had questioned them, advised them, and tried to persuade them to forget you. They admitted that they had attempted to move forward. They had filled their schedule, changed familiar routines, and avoided places where memories of you might return. Yet every road away from you somehow brought them back to the same truth. You were not a passing emotion. You were the person who had awakened something inside them that no distance could erase. The room remained completely still as your soulmate explained that loving you had changed the way they understood themselves. Before you, they believed love had to be earned through perfection. They believed they needed to hide their fears and present only the parts of themselves that looked strong. But you had seen beyond that performance. You noticed the quiet details. You understood the pauses between their words. You recognized when their smile was covering exhaustion, and somehow you made them feel worthy without demanding an explanation. Your answer is closer than you think. The confession was becoming deeper, but no one yet understood why it had erupted on that particular night. Then a white feather drifted past the window, even though the glass was closed. Your soulmate noticed it, and their expression changed again. Earlier that evening, before entering the gathering, they had privately asked heaven for one clear sign. They had whispered, "If this love is still part of my path, show me something I cannot ignore." They had asked to see a white feather before the night ended. Now it had appeared at the exact moment your name filled the room. They could no longer hide behind coincidence. They could no longer tell themselves that silence was patience. Silence had become fear wearing a peaceful mask, and your soulmate finally recognized it. Don't skip, because the words that followed stunned everyone. Your soulmate placed a hand over their heart, looked directly at the people who believed they should forget you, and declared, "I love them. I have loved them through every quiet day, every misunderstanding, every distance, and every moment when I pretended I did not. I love them, and I am finished acting as if that truth should be hidden." But even that was not the moment that shocked the room most. One person asked whether this was merely nostalgia. Another asked whether your soulmate truly understood the weight of what they were saying. Your soulmate turned toward them, and years of buried emotion rose at once. This time they did not whisper. They did not soften the truth to make anyone comfortable. They screamed their love for you in front of everyone. Your name echoed through the room, followed by words so sincere that even the people who had doubted the connection could no longer pretend it was imaginary. Something huge is waiting for you, because after that declaration, an unexpected person stood up from the far side of the room, and that person was holding something that belonged to you. The object in their hands was small, but the moment your soulmate saw it, all the color left their face. Stay with me, because this was not something they expected to see there. It was an envelope they believed had disappeared long ago, sealed with a symbol they recognized immediately, a tiny circle crossed by a single golden line. To everyone else, it looked ordinary. To your soulmate, it carried the memory of a promise neither of you had ever spoken aloud. That symbol had appeared during one of the most meaningful moments between you, a moment when nothing dramatic happened on the outside, yet both hearts quietly understood that life had shifted. Your soulmate had drawn it once while sitting beside you, absent-mindedly tracing it as you spoke. You had noticed, smiled, and said it looked like two paths meeting beneath the same sun. They never forgot those words. They had kept the paper for months, until one day it vanished. Now the symbol had returned on an envelope held by someone who had just heard them scream that they loved you. Don't look away now. The person stepped forward and revealed that the envelope had been delivered earlier that evening with instructions that it should be opened only if your soulmate finally told the truth. No one knew who had sent it. There was no return address and no explanation. Your soulmate's hands trembled as they accepted it. They hesitated because they feared it might contain proof that they had waited too long. Perhaps it would say you had closed the door forever. Perhaps it would confirm that their silence had cost them the one bond they could never replace. Yet when they touched the envelope, the candle in the room flickered again, and the song that had been playing suddenly ended on the exact line that once reminded them of you. The entire gathering felt the shift. Even those who did not believe in signs became quiet. What comes next changes everything. Your soulmate opened the envelope and found a single folded page. At the top was the same golden symbol. Beneath it were words written long before that night, words describing the difference between being forgotten and being loved from a distance. The message did not accuse them. It did not demand an apology. It said that some connections remain quiet not because they are weak, but because both people are learning how to carry something greater than their old fears. Your soulmate read the first line silently, and tears fell onto the page. Someone asked what it said, but they could not answer. Their heart had recognized the truth before their mind could form a response. The message described a person who had been misunderstood, a person who appeared calm while carrying a storm of emotion, a person who often withdrew at the exact moment they wanted to come closer. Every line described your soulmate perfectly. Yet the message had been written before many of those moments happened. This is where the story begins at a deeper level, because your soulmate suddenly understood that you had seen their heart far earlier than they realized. You had not loved only the version of them who seemed confident. You had sensed the frightened part that expected love to disappear once it became real. You had recognized their pattern of stepping back, and instead of exposing their weakness, you had protected their dignity. That realization shattered the final barrier within them. They looked around the room and admitted that their greatest regret was not the distance itself. Their greatest regret was allowing you to believe that their silence meant you were unimportant. They confessed that there had been countless moments when they nearly reached out. They had opened old conversations, stared at your name, and imagined what they might say. Sometimes they typed a complete message and erased it. Sometimes they hoped you would somehow know what their pride refused to express. Sometimes they prayed for another chance and then became frightened when life placed an opening before them. Stay till the end. There was still a secret inside the envelope, and this secret changed the meaning of the entire night. Beneath the page was a photograph your soulmate had never seen. It showed a place connected to the beginning of your story, but there was something different in the background. Standing at a distance was the same person who had delivered the envelope. Your soulmate looked at them in disbelief and asked why they had been there. The person answered that they had witnessed the first time you and your soulmate truly noticed one another. They had seen the instant recognition in both faces. They remembered how the atmosphere seemed to pause, how you both tried to act ordinary, and how neither of you understood that someone else had quietly observed the beginning. For a long time, this witness had kept silent. They believed the connection would find its own way. But after seeing your soulmate resist their feelings again and again, they decided the truth could no longer remain buried. The photograph had been preserved for this exact moment. Your answer is closer than you think. On the back of it, someone had written, they looked at each other as if they were remembering, not meeting. When your soulmate read those words aloud, the room fell silent again. Even the people who had encouraged them to move on could feel that this was not an ordinary attachment. It carried the weight of recognition, timing, and a lesson neither of you could have learned separately. But there was an emotional twist no one expected. The person who had argued most strongly against the bond stood up. Your soulmate prepared for another objection, but instead, that person admitted they had been wrong. They had mistaken your soulmate's fear for uncertainty and your quietness for absence. Then they revealed something startling. Days earlier, they had encountered you unexpectedly. They did not tell your soulmate because they wanted to understand your true feelings without influencing either side. During that meeting, they had heard you speak about love in a way that changed their mind completely. You had not spoken with resentment. You had not tried to make your soulmate look guilty. You had simply said that sometimes the deepest love is the love that refuses to force another person before they are ready. When your soulmate heard this, they covered their mouth and closed their eyes. The compassion they had received from you was greater than they deserved, and it became impossible to contain their emotions. They cried because while they had feared you might judge them, you had been protecting them even in their absence. They cried because while others told you to forget, your heart had chosen understanding. They cried because they finally saw how much strength had been hiding inside your gentleness. Don't skip. Your soulmate then spoke another truth in front of everyone. They never asked me to prove anything. They never tried to control my path. They gave me space, and I used that space to hide. I called it confusion, but it was fear. I called it bad timing, but I was waiting to become brave. Tonight, I am done waiting. Those words changed the energy of the room. The gathering was no longer about questioning their feelings. It had become the moment your soulmate chose responsibility over excuses. They understood that declaring love was only the first step. The true test would be what they did after the room became quiet and everyone returned home. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate made a decision right there. They reached for their phone. Your name was still saved exactly as it had always been, beside a small symbol no one else understood. Their thumb hovered above your name. Everyone watched, expecting them to call you immediately. But before they could touch the screen, the lights dimmed, the closed door behind them opened, and a voice from the hallway said, "Wait. Before you contact them, you need to know why they never stopped believing in you." No one in the room recognized the voice at first, but your soulmate did. It belonged to someone connected to a chapter of your life they thought had ended long ago. "Stay with me." The person stepped into the light carrying no dramatic expression, only a calm certainty that made the entire room attentive. They had known you during a season when you rarely spoke about your pain. They had watched you rebuild yourself quietly, choosing grace when bitterness would have been easier. Your soulmate stared at them, confused, because they could not understand how this person knew about the gathering or the confession. The visitor explained that they had not arrived by accident. Earlier that day, they had felt an unusual pull to bring forward a truth they had guarded for a long time. They had almost ignored it, but every attempt to walk away was interrupted by the same symbol, the circle crossed by a golden line. It appeared on a passing vehicle, on the cover of a book, and finally on the envelope that led them to the gathering. Don't look away now, because the visitor knew something your soulmate had never been told. During the longest period of distance between you, there was a night when you had almost decided to release the connection completely. You were exhausted from wondering whether you mattered. You had carried hope without receiving clarity, and your heart wanted peace. You sat alone and made a quiet promise: if holding on required losing yourself, you would let go with love. Yet before you closed that chapter, you did something no one expected. You wrote a letter, not to your soulmate, but to the future version of yourself. In it, you described what this connection had taught you. You wrote that love should awaken courage, not erase dignity. You wrote that waiting should never mean abandoning your own purpose. And you wrote that if your soulmate ever returned, they would need to come with truth, not another mystery. What comes next changes everything. The visitor possessed that letter. They had kept it because you once asked them to protect it until the right moment, a moment you were not certain would ever come. Your soulmate's expression changed as they realized that the night was not merely revealing their love to everyone. It was also revealing the transformation you had undergone while they remained silent. You were no longer the person waiting helplessly for a sign. You had become the sign. Your patience had become wisdom. Your heartbreak had become discernment. Your quietness had become strength. You still carried love, but you no longer needed to chase anyone for recognition. This was the truth your soulmate needed to understand before contacting you. Their public declaration could not be used as a shortcut around accountability. If they wanted to enter your life again, they would have to honor the person you had become. The room listened as the visitor read a small portion of your letter. It said that you did not want grand promises spoken in emotional moments. You wanted consistency after the emotion settled. You did not need someone to rescue you. You wanted someone brave enough to walk beside you. You did not need perfect timing. You needed honest intention. Each sentence reached your soulmate more deeply than the last. Their declaration had been powerful, but your letter revealed the greater test waiting beyond that room. This is where the story begins, because your soulmate did not retreat. They did not become defensive or blame the past. Instead, they nodded through their tears and said, "Then I will not approach them with empty words. I will approach them with the truth, and I will respect whatever they choose." That response surprised everyone. Until that moment, some people believed your soulmate was being carried by sudden emotion. But now they witnessed maturity rising where fear had once lived. Your soulmate placed their phone down and asked the visitor to continue. "Your answer is closer than you think." The visitor unfolded the rest of the letter and revealed that one line had been sealed beneath another piece of paper. You had written it only after a dream that felt unusually vivid. In the dream, you stood beneath a night sky while two distant lights moved toward the same horizon. A voice told you, "What is real will not require you to become smaller. It will return when both hearts can stand in truth." You awoke with a sense of peace you could not explain. That was the night you stopped begging life for answers. You began investing your energy in healing, purpose, and the future waiting for you. Without realizing it, your decision changed the connection. The moment you stopped pulling on the bond through worry, your soulmate began feeling its truth more clearly. They started dreaming of you. Familiar places reminded them of words you had said. They repeatedly noticed your initials. Yet the strongest sign was not outside them. It was the growing awareness that every attempt to imagine a future without you felt unfinished. Stay till the end, because the most surprising revelation was still hidden. The visitor turned the letter over, and there, written in different handwriting, was a response. Your soulmate recognized it as their own, but they had no memory of writing it. The date showed that it had been written years earlier, before your letter even existed. Everyone looked at your soulmate in confusion. They took the page and read the response slowly. It said, "If I ever become brave enough to speak before everyone, it will be because silence has finally become more painful than truth. When that night arrives, tell them I was never trying to forget them. I was trying to become someone who could remain. Your soulmate sat down, overwhelmed. Then the memory returned. Years earlier, during a moment of private reflection, they had written those words and given them to the visitor, believing they were only describing an impossible wish. They had forgotten the page, but the visitor had recognized the connection between both letters. Two messages written at different times had answered one another as though they were part of the same conversation. One spoke of love returning in truth. The other spoke of becoming brave enough to remain. The golden symbol connected them both. Don't skip, because this was the once-in-a-lifetime revelation that transformed everyone's understanding of the night. Your soulmate had not screamed their love merely because someone challenged them. They had reached the exact moment both of you had unknowingly described long before it arrived. Your separate paths had been preparing the same doorway from opposite sides. The delays, the silence, and even the misunderstandings had not been meaningless, but neither were they excuses. They were lessons asking both hearts to grow. You were learning not to lose yourself in love. Your soulmate was learning not to hide from love. Now those lessons had brought the truth into the open. The person who once doubted you looked at your soulmate and quietly asked, "Do you understand what this means?" Your soulmate answered, "It means I cannot return to them as the person who walked away. I must arrive as the person who finally knows how to stay." For the first time that evening, the room felt peaceful. The candle flame became still. The clock, which had appeared frozen during the confession, began moving again. Your soulmate looked at your name on their phone, but they did not rush. They understood that this moment deserved more than an impulsive call surrounded by curious faces. They wanted their next step to be honest, private, and worthy of the love they had declared. Something huge is waiting for you. They left the gathering holding the two letters and the old photograph. Outside, the night air felt different, as though the world had made room for a new beginning. They walked toward their car, rehearsing nothing this time. No perfect speech. No clever explanation. Only truth. Before opening the door, they looked upward and whispered that if they were given one genuine opportunity, they would no longer allow fear to speak louder than love. Then their phone illuminated in their hand. A message had arrived from an unknown number. It contained no greeting, only a photograph taken moments earlier from across the street. In the photograph, your soulmate was standing beneath a streetlight, holding the letters against their heart. Beneath the image were 7 words that made them stop breathing for a moment. "They already know what you said tonight." Your soulmate turned quickly, searching the quiet street, but no one was there. Then another message appeared, "And they are closer than you think." At that exact moment, footsteps sounded behind them. Your soulmate slowly turned around. And what they saw proved that their confession in front of everyone was not the final revelation. It was only the door opening.